All right, folks, welcome to the 12-minute leadership series. My name is Pittampalli. I'm really excited today because we have a great topic, and that is how to facilitate a real debate. Now, what I mean is a real debate. See, a lot of people think that they're holding real debates, but what they're holding is what I think, or what I call faux debates, which they look and feel like a debate, but they're not really debates because people are holding back. People are terrified of actually telling their honest dissenting opinions, and that is actually killing the debate. It's actually doing the reverse of what you want it to do, which is instead of leading to good decisions, which is what debates are great for, it's actually ensuring that a catastrophic decision might actually occur. So what I want to do today is I want to talk to you about the 6 tactics. That's 6 tactics for how to facilitate a real debate, one with authentic conflict and disagreement. But first, what I want to do is I want to sell you on the idea of a debate. Why are debates so important? Why exactly do they lead to good decisions? It sounds like such an obvious question, but most people don't really know the answer. And so what I want to do is I want to start there. But before I get much further, I want to remind you that at the end of this 12-minute webinar, there will be an optional Q&A section. So anybody that has questions, feel free to submit them right now, because at the end of the 12 minutes, I'm going to go into the box, find some good questions, and give some answers. So start putting in your questions whenever they come to you. Okay, so let's get started here. Why exactly does debate lead to good decisions? Well, one of the reasons why we make bad decisions is what's known as the confirmation bias. Now, most people understand what the confirmation bias is, right? It's pretty intuitive. It's human beings are biased to search for information that confirms their existing beliefs and disregard contradictory information, right? If you think something, you're going to constantly search for information that validates that thought, right? And so this is one of the reasons why we make bad decisions, right? We get down this train of thought, right? We start thinking that, oh, path A is the best path. And then when the world presents us with evidence that path A is the right one, we love it and we embrace it. Yet when there's evidence that path A isn't the right direction, we just ignore it or we rationalize it. So the reason why debate is so crucial is because when you have an adversary, when you have somebody else who's arguing with you with their own confirmation bias, because remember, they have a confirmation bias too, these two confirmation biases collide. They actually interact with each other and they cancel each other out. And not only do they cancel each other out, this competition of confirmation biases actually leads to better decisions. So think about our justice system, for example, right? One of the areas where we want, most importantly as a society, to make the right decisions, right? I mean, we're deciding whether or not we should send people to jail, for God's sakes. We know we want to get it right. What do we have? We have two sides. We have adversaries, right? We have a defense and we have a prosecutions that argue with each other, because can you imagine what would happen if there was only one, right? Imagine if there was only a defense team or only a prosecution. What you would find is this confirmation bias would lead the defense to think that to argue that the person on trial is not guilty, and you would have the prosecution only arguing that somebody is guilty, and that confirmation bias would basically go unchecked. But because these two forces are competing against each other and having a debate, what you find is it leads to better quality decisions. It makes it more likely that the truth will prevail. Now, it doesn't guarantee it, right? I mean, nothing can guarantee that you're going to end up with the right decision, but it makes it more likely. And so this is the logic behind why debate is so crucial. It's to temper this confirmation bias, and actually by having multiple confirmation biases interact with each other, you're actually turning what is perceived as a weakness into a strength. Okay, so I hope that makes sense, because now what I want to do is I want to talk about if you are embracing this idea that debate is crucial, right, to making great decisions, then the question is, how do we facilitate a real debate? How do we make sure that we get that adversarial force? How do we make sure that we get this authentic conflict? Well, there's six tactics here, okay? So I want to go through them one by one. Each one of them is important. So tactic number one, make a genuine request for candor, okay? So what do we mean by that? You want to make it clear to people that disagreement is the whole point of the session. In fact, I recommend you call it a debate, right? Don't call it a discussion, because a discussion has certain connotations, right? A debate makes it sound like the whole point is we're going to disagree with each other. That's what's welcome here. And the key word here is genuine. You know, people are smarter than you think. You know, a lot of times what they'll do is they will take your invitation to disagree and they will perceive it to be not a real invitation. And often that has the benefit of being true, because we don't want to be criticized, right? We don't want to disagree. And no matter how clearly we say it, our nonverbal behavior suggests otherwise. So you have to be careful when you make this request for candor. You have to be very authentic about it. You know, you have to kind of, you know, you don't have to lie. I mean, basically, you could be honest. You could say, listen, this is often difficult for me because nobody likes to be criticized, but we know in service of the mission, in service of having a good decision, it's crucial that you are honest in your opinions and you disagree with me or disagree with anybody else at the table if you find, if you have a dissenting point of view. That's tactic number one. Tactic number two, ask for opinions before you reveal your own. So what happens so often is a leader has more influence than they think, right? So when you express your opinion in advance, what happens is it breeds conformity. So let's say, for example, your opinion is over here, and I'm coming to your meeting and my opinion is over here, at least privately, right? That's kind of what my original opinion is. Well, as soon as you make your opinion known, it acts as a psychological anchor that makes me shift my opinion towards yours, right? Sometimes I'll shift my opinion all the way, and that breeds real groupthink, right? Because now I'm just mimicking your opinion. I'm telling you what you want to be told. But sometimes what it will do, it'll just make their opinion less extreme. It'll basically dilute the conflict. And you don't want to dilute the conflict. You want real, authentic disagreement. So one of the most important things you can do is to not reveal your opinion until after you've heard theirs. One of the best ways to do this is to get people's opinions in writing in advance of the meeting. So before the meeting, don't tell them your opinion, just tell them the issue. Have them submit to you their opinion in writing by email. And then when you're at the meeting, you have all of the opinions of people in your hand, so now they can't shift it once they know your opinion. Does that make sense? Okay, tactic number three, use exercises that force people to disagree. So sometimes people want to disagree, but they just don't know when the opportune moment is. So give them the opportune moment, right? So here's an example of an exercise. Imagine having everyone at the debate, everyone at the table, asking them this question. Answer the following question. What is your number one concern? What is your kind of biggest concern regarding this plan, right? Now, you're not asking them if they do have a concern or not. You're telling them, I want you to produce a concern. You know, you might even say, if you had a concern, what would it be? And what you're doing is you're empowering them to speak up. I mean, if somebody really has an opinion and they're withholding it, this might empower them now or never to basically say what's on their mind. Okay, number four. The number four tactic for how to facilitate a real debate. Recognize nonverbal leaks. This is a crucial skill. So when your attendees are withholding their opinion and they really have kind of this passionate disagreement that they want to get out, but they don't feel empowered to do it, they may shut their mouth, but you can't really shut off the rest of your body. It's very hard, right? People will emit what is called nonverbal leaks, right? So you might see as you're talking or somebody else is talking, they might, for example, roll their eyes, or they may start to squirm in their chair or suddenly kind of shake their head no. This is an evidence that they have a dissenting opinion. So call them out on it. right? Maybe say something like, Amanda, I just noticed that I feel like I get the sense that you might have a concern here. We'd love to know what that concern is. And if you call them out without judgment and you give them that opportunity, don't be surprised if they actually voice their true concern. Tactic number 5, publicly reward candor. This is somewhat obvious that if somebody does voice a disagreement and you bite their head off, right, or even just moan and groan non-verbally, they will never do it again, okay? So you have to be very careful with your reaction when somebody does actually authentically disagree. You have to control yourself and really not bite their head off, but even go one step further and actually praise them. Tell them how valued that contribution was. And again, you don't have to be inauthentic about it. Don't pretend that you love criticism, because not many people do, but remind them of how important that was and how you're doing exactly what I want you to do, essentially. Okay, the final tactic, number 6. If all else fails, invite an independent facilitator. Sometimes we are so invested in our idea. Sometimes we're so blind to criticism, we don't want to hear it, that it's very hard for us to facilitate the debate in a way that guarantees authentic conflict. So find somebody else. Find a colleague who's in another department, or your boss, or somebody, a mentor, who doesn't have an axe to grind, who doesn't have a stake in the game, who will manage the disagreement for you. This is a very mature decision that you need to make, because sometimes as much as you want disagreement, you may not be able to stomach it because of the fact that you're invested in it. So you may sabotage the disagreement. That's why having an independent facilitator is often a really good way to signal that you're serious about authentic conflict, you want to run a real debate, and I'm going to this length to make sure that you guys feel comfortable actually voicing your concerns. That doesn't mean you're not in the room, but now you have somebody who's like your advocate, who's able to help you voice those concerns. Anyway, those are the 6 tactics. Please make sure you're running real debates and not faux debates, and use these ways to come up with authentic conflict. At this time, it's the end of the primary session. What I want to do is I want to answer some of your questions, okay? Those of you who need to drop off, good luck. Have real debates. For the rest of you, I want you to think about what I told you, and I want you to submit questions, because this is a crucial distinction that I'm teaching you today, and I want to make sure that you're empowered to actually do this. So if you have any concerns or any feedback about this session, anything that's not clear, I want you to tell it to me, because my goal here today is for you to actually walk away implementing this in your own organizations. So if you give me a moment, I'm going to check to see if we have any questions here. Okay, let's see. This is a great question. Howard has a fantastic question, which is, how do you manage one person who dominates the conversation with their opinions? Now, this is an important point, because all of the decision-making research suggests that whoever talks the most, whoever dominates, can often breed conformity, right? Sometimes it's not even the meeting leader. The meeting leader often, or the leader, the boss, often wields the power, right? They're the one who influences the debate. But it's often, sometimes it's just the person who talks either the first or who dominates the conversation who basically creates undue bias, right? Now people start to shift their opinions in their direction. And here's the crucial thing about conformity, by the way, is that a lot of times people don't even realize that they are conforming, that they're shifting their opinion. This is often an unconscious process. So people don't even realize they're doing it. That's why this is extra insidious, and this is why we need to root this out. So one of the ways to do this, again, is what we talked about earlier, which is getting people's opinions in advance, okay? If you get people's opinions in advance, then they are more likely to stick with their position, right? Because now they have committed to their prior opinion. They've articulated in their mind. They know what it is. It's very conscious to them. And now when somebody dominates the conversation and starts talking about their opinion, they're less likely to be influenced that in a bad way, okay? But more importantly, the second thing you need to do is really look out for that and make sure that when somebody is dominating conversation in a bad way, right, then you need to subtly and politely, and not subtly, maybe often directly, get them to give up the mic. Okay, this is important, and often if there's somebody who is kind of very likely to do this, who does this over and over again, you might want to have a conversation with them beforehand and really get them to understand that, listen, it's so crucial in order to get authentic conflict from everyone that you don't monopolize the conversation. The other thing you can do is to make sure that you value their contribution. Tell them you value their contribution, and give them an opportunity to have a one-on-one conversation with you afterwards, right? So that's a great way of managing this conflict, because this person oftentimes wants attention. They want to be heard. So tell them, like, listen, I feel like you have really strong opinions here, and I want to give other people a chance to contribute, but I'd love to have a one-on-one conversation with you after, because I'm really interested in what you have to say. That's a great way to kind of subtly get them to kind of give other people a turn. Okay, let's see if there are any other questions here. Okay, how do you move from the debate to a decision? This is a fantastic question, Larry. There are two steps here in solving any problem, making any decision. There's divergence, and then there's convergence, right? Divergence is basically getting people to disagree, so that way we can get as many options as possible on the table. The convergence is when we stop that process and we say, okay, now that we have a lot of options, we need to pick one, right? So Larry is making this distinction rightly and very smartly that, okay, we need to figure out how do we do both. Well, the first thing to realize is that these are two distinct phases that you shouldn't confuse, right? You should have one phase and then the other. Ideally, sometimes it gets a little bit confused, but ideally what you want to do is, for example, if you have a meeting that you need to resolve and actually make a decision, one of the things you can do is make sure that you split the meeting in half, right? So let's say it's a 40-minute meeting. The first 20 minutes is all about divergence, right? And bring a kitchen timer. This is really crucial. You bring a kitchen timer, and after 20 minutes are over, after you've had a robust debate, you made a list of all the options. The second half of the meeting, as soon as that kitchen timer goes off, is all about coming together, right? This is often a very uncomfortable kind of hard stop that needs to happen. And it's one of the reasons why leaders don't do it, because it feels kind of jarring to cut everybody off and say, okay, that's it, we're done. Now we need to start agreeing. This is critical, though. This is your job as a leader. You need to make that hard stop where you're transitioning from divergence to convergence, as awkward and as difficult as it is. Because what often happens is you get to the end of the meeting, the last 5 minutes, you're like, we haven't made a decision. And then you have a very poor convergence process. And then people blame you, right? Because either you don't make a decision or you make a decision, and now you seem like a dictator because you didn't give sufficient time to be able to develop consensus. Good question, though. Okay, we have plenty of questions. I have time for maybe one more here. In your modern meeting book, Andrew asks, you advocate having someone make a decision prior to the meeting. So in the ensuing debate, what do you do with the decision? This is a great question, Andrew, because those of you who have read my book will notice that this is a little bit of a divergence from my modern meeting standard. So one of the points I've recently learned is how important this idea of robust debates are, and how insidious groupthink is, right? So like what I advocated in my modern meeting standard book is, ideally give your people the decision in advance, or at least your plan, your proposal, and then have them debate it in the room once they're in the meeting, right? That will speed things up. But when it comes to important decisions, right? I mentioned this in the first webinar in this leadership series, when it comes to high consequence decisions, that is often a recipe for failure, right? Because for low consequence decisions, fine. Let people know in advance because that will speed things up. That will get you to the finish line quickest, right? Because it's a low consequence decision. Who cares? You don't want to get it right. I mean, you want to get it right, but good enough is better than right as long as you move things forward. When it comes to high consequence decisions, though, important ones, we want to make sure that we understand that groupthink is the enemy. And so what we want to do is we want to make sure that we're withholding our opinion, so that way we get the proper divergence. We get people's honest opinions. I'm actually breaking some news here. My book is actually, I'm actually releasing an updated version of my book that is including this logic in September that I'm really excited about. It's going to be in bookstores available September. You'll find out more information about that. But that is a very crucial update. It's when it comes to high consequence decisions, you want to remember that conflict is more important than speed. Okay, guys, so that's all the time we have today. What I'm going to try to do is I'm going to try to email anybody who submitted a question. I'm going to try to get back to you via email. So thanks for submitting those questions because we have a lot here. I just don't have time to go through all of them. Again, we're doing this every week. This is about the 6th one, and I'm getting great feedback, so I'm going to continue to do it. If you have any feedback, questions, comments, or concerns, let me know. Other than that, good luck. Have a great day.